13-yard completion, and then 15 yards on top of it.
Okay, so recently, there's been a lot of talk in the NFL about how the game in recent years has changed, making it very difficult for some defenses to adjust, and this has, in a way, affected the product on the field. In 2018, the NFL made it illegal for players to initiate contact with an opponent by lowering their helmet into them. Also, there's been many examples during games of what should actually constitute a roughing the passer call versus a legal hit on a quarterback. Anyways, Tom Brady made an appearance on the Stephen A. Smith Show on YouTube and addressed the state of the modern game and finally gave his opinion on all the rumors surrounding Patriots head coach Bill Belichick's future in Foxborough. Have a listen.
Winning football games in the NFL is hard. And there's I think there's a lot of mediocrity in today's NFL. Yeah. I don't see the excellence that I saw in the past.
Why not? Why not? Why do you think that is?
I think the coaching isn't as good as it was. I don't think the development of young players is as good as it was. I don't think the schemes are as good as they were. I think the rules have allowed a lot of bad habits to get into the actual performance of the game. Mm-hmm. So I just think the product, in my opinion, is less than what it's been. I think guys are competitive. Guys play hard. I look at a lot of players like Ray Lewis and Rodney Harrison and Ronnie Lott, and guys that impacted the game in a certain way, and every hit they would have made would have been a penalty. You know, and I your coach is complaining about their own player being tackled, and not necessarily, why don't they talk to their player about how to protect himself, how to get rid of the ball, how to throw it, how to run out of bounds, how to get down, how to lower your pad level. We used to work on the fundamentals of those things all the time. Now they're trying to be regulated all the time. You know, I think the offensive players need to protect themselves. It's not up to the defensive player to protect the offensive player. A defensive player needs to protect himself. You shouldn't ask the offensive player to protect him. And I think a lot of the way that the rules have come into play have allowed this. You can essentially play carefree, and then if anyone hits you hard, there's a penalty. And it's very different than how I played. I didn't throw the ball to certain areas because I was afraid players were going to get knocked out. Mm-hmm. That's the reality. Wow. I didn't throw it to the middle when I played Ray Lewis because you knock him out of the game, and I couldn't afford to lose a good player. So guys like that, the only way to beat skill was physicality. And that was a physical sport. You don't get into a boxing match and say, I want to beat you, but I don't really want to hit you that hard. You know, it's up to you. Now, the refs there to make sure nothing is done unfairly or, hit below the belt. There's a few rules. Right. I believe that if players have an opportunity to protect themselves, they need to protect themselves.
Okay, so there's quite a bit to unpack here. Brady addressed a few different things. First, he feels that the level of coaching in the league has diminished, and I fully agree, but I think it's a bit more complex than that. I believe a lot of that has to do with the era we are living in today. Many of these young athletes coming out of college already have tens, if not hundreds of thousands of followers on social media, and at the young age they're entering the league, it does make it more difficult for coaches to develop their game. Maybe it's just my boomer mentality in me, but I feel like a lot of these younger players don't want to be coached hard. I mean, imagine 20 years ago, a player asking for practice to be more fun with the adding of music during their sessions. Chase Claypool did get ostracized for that comment, but nonetheless, it does go to show you today's generation of players think differently than from the past. Regarding the changes in the rules, Tom brings up a good point. It's become nearly impossible for defenders to stop anyone in the skill position. Just this past week, many criticized Bengals linebacker Logan Wilson's hip drop tackle on Mark Andrews, so this is obviously a very sensitive issue for the league. On one hand, you want to protect your players, but at what expense? Many people have voiced their displeasure on social media at how the NFL has evolved over the years. It seems like every week there are numerous roughing the passer calls that seem highly questionable. Personally, for myself, I'm kinda at odds on this topic. I don't want to see anyone get injured or risk any further physical damage down the road, but at the same time, it definitely sucks when your team gets dinged with a penalty that they absolutely have no control over. Actually, the other day, Shannon Sharp and Chad Johnson recently talked about the biggest hits they've taken, and I made a video about this with the actual footage of each hit that left both players concussed on the field. If you want to check that out, I'll leave a thumbnail link at the end of this video. One thing that Tom Brady said that struck me was when he said that teams can essentially play carefree football, and if anyone hits you hard, there's a penalty. Honestly, some might have an issue with this coming from Tom's mouth. We all know he got a lot of favorable calls from the refs, and the league even made a rule change after he got a knee injury and missed the majority of the 2008 season. But that being said, he's not wrong, and I don't really fault him for those calls. This just kinda adds to my point earlier of where your defense is playing lights out, and all of a sudden, in a flip of a switch, the entire game is changed because of a questionable penalty from the refs. It's hard to ask for defenses to come back from this. Imagine a third down play and your defense gets hit with a 15-yard penalty and the opposing team gets a new set of downs. This would kill any momentum for a defense and crush them mentally speaking. Anyways, the next part of this interview, Tom Brady chimed in on the situation in Foxborough with the 2-8 Patriots and Bill Belichick's future with his former team. Have a listen.
Am I off kilter when I said this? Because I've said this publicly. I certainly would never advocate that Bill Belichick be gone. He's the greatest coach, arguably the greatest coach to have ever lived, and there is no debating that. What I have said, however, is that just like you thought it was time for you to move on, it may come a point where Bill Belichick thinks it's time for him to move on to something new and for New England to start anew because the era of Tom Brady and Bill Belichick has passed. Am I off kilter, or are any of us off kilter in your mind when we say something like that?
I think he's an incredible coach. He's the best coach, in my belief, in the history of the game. So, I mean, I don't know. The thought of him not being in New England is hard for me to think about.
Wow.
So I think he prepares the team really well. And ultimately, you got to have a lot of people around you to succeed. You got to have a lot of things in place for the organization to be successful. Mm-hmm. I don't think he's probably coaching much difference now than when we were undefeated in 2007.
Right.
I'm sure he's preparing the team the same way. The results are different, but again, that's why the sport's so challenging. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of reasons why teams win or lose. The head coach is a very small part on game day.
Yes.
The quarterback plays a really big part on game day. Not the entire thing, but because you touch the ball, you have a big opportunity to impact the game. So if you get good quarterback play, and that says nothing about, I'm just talking in general about football,
right.
You got an advantage. If you play really good defense, you got a great advantage. That means you need a good defensive coordinator. Ultimately, it's a lot of things coming together, why things work and why they don't.
Contrary to what many in the media have reported, I still do think Tom and Bill share something very special, even after Brady's departure. They spent 20 years together and won so much, and it's hard to believe that they don't have a soft spot for one another. Judging by Brady's facial expression, he does genuinely seem like he feels for his old coach. Tom knows how hard it is to win in the NFL, and without a proper quarterback or a defense to make it up, it's going to be difficult for any coach to win in the league. That said, there are a ton of rumors about Belichick's future, and one of the more promising landing spots for him would be with the LA Chargers. It appears Brandon Staley may have overstayed his welcome, and it's hard to believe with a quarterback like Justin Herbert how a team with all those pieces has struggled this season. Imagine Bill with a guy like Herbert under his wing. On top of that, you have guys like Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, and Derwin James, players that I'm sure Bill Belichick can do wonders with. But the main thing is that he'll finally have a true franchise QB in Justin Herbert. Herbert, since entering the league, has been one of my favorite quarterbacks to watch, especially with that arm, but this season he has struggled a bit at times. Again, a lot of that has to do with Brandon Staley as his head coach, so I think Bill Belichick, considering the Chargers, would be a huge benefit for both QB and coach.